By 2026, a maze of hidden housing laws could quietly rewrite your life. Overnight tax reassessments, rent cap rollbacks, and energy mandates may spike bills beyond reach. New digital ID rules can freeze titles. AI mortgage scoring can hike rates mid-year. Miss a form, miss a payment, lose your home. Vacancy fines, value capture fees, and stronger squatter protections add pressure you never budgeted. Insurance linked to climate risk could void coverage, letting banks call loans immediately. This is not doomscroll drama. It's policy already drafted in city halls. Stay ahead, decode the rules, and protect the roof you built today. Number 1. Property Tax Reassessment Laws. Across major cities, new property tax reassessment laws are being introduced quietly, set to take effect in 2026, and they could reshape how millions of homeowners manage their finances. These laws allow governments to recalculate property values automatically every year using advanced AI and digital valuation systems. While the intent is to ensure fair taxation, the reality is far more troubling. Many regions are experiencing sharp increases in land and housing prices, and these AI-driven assessments are programmed to adjust taxes based on market trends rather than personal income levels. A home that was affordable last year could suddenly be considered high value, causing a massive spike in annual tax bills, sometimes by 20% or more. For families already managing tight budgets, these changes could transform a stable home into an unmanageable expense. The new reassessment models don't just target the wealthy, they affect ordinary homeowners, especially retirees and middle-class families living in properties bought decades ago. These groups are most at risk because their income often remains fixed, while their property's assessed value keeps climbing. Governments justify this by claiming it reflects true market worth. Yet they rarely consider inflation, cost of living, or stagnant wages. In some cases, unpaid taxes can trigger automatic foreclosure proceedings, allowing state authorities to seize homes within months. This hidden clause, buried within local property legislation, gives bureaucracies enormous power over private citizens, even if the property has been in the same family for generations. The problem deepens when homeowners attempt to appeal these inflated valuations. The appeal process often requires costly legal support or certified private assessments, both out of reach for many. As AI replaces manual inspections, the system becomes less transparent, leaving homeowners without a clear explanation for sudden increases. The result is a silent transfer of wealth from individuals to municipal treasuries under the banner of modernization. For millions, these property tax reassessment laws could act as a slow financial squeeze, forcing them to sell, relocate, or face eviction, not because they failed financially, but because a digital algorithm decided their homes were suddenly worth too much. Number 2. Rent cap rollbacks. Throughout 2026, several governments are expected to roll back long-standing rent control protections, reshaping the rental landscape for millions of tenants worldwide. These rent cap rollbacks will remove limits that previously restricted landlords from raising rents beyond a certain percentage each year. Under the new policies, property owners will be free to adjust rental prices according to current market demand, inflation, or even algorithmic rent estimation tools. For tenants, this shift could mean a sudden surge in monthly payments, leaving many unable to afford the same homes they have lived in for years. What seems like a technical economic adjustment could quickly turn into a nationwide eviction crisis as people earning average incomes struggle to match the soaring costs of living. The rollout of these changes is often justified as a way to encourage investment, yet the immediate impact falls heavily on working families already burdened by stagnant wages and rising utility costs. This deregulation gives corporate landlords and large investment firms unprecedented leverage over the housing market. Many of these companies are purchasing entire apartment complexes and using data-driven pricing models to maximize rental profit margins. These models evaluate local demand, tenant income levels, and neighbourhood amenities to set the optimal rent, often far above what most residents can sustain. The situation becomes even more severe in urban centres where housing supply is limited. As rents rise unchecked, tenants face impossible choices: downsize drastically, relocate to unsafe or distant areas, or take on unsustainable debt just to remain housed. Small landlords might follow the same pattern to keep up with competitors, creating a ripple effect across the entire housing ecosystem. The human consequences of rent cap rollbacks are already visible in early pilot regions where similar laws were tested. Homelessness rates spiked, eviction filings doubled, and cities saw the formation of overcrowded, informal settlements. Without rent limits, housing transforms from a necessity into a speculative asset controlled by financial forces rather than human needs. By 2026, millions could find themselves displaced not because they failed to pay rent on time, but because the laws meant to protect them were quietly erased, leaving profit to dictate who deserves a place to live. Number 3. Vacant property penalties. A growing number of governments are preparing to implement vacant property penalties in 2026, designed to discourage individuals and corporations from leaving homes unoccupied for long periods. On the surface, these laws aim to reduce housing shortages by pushing property owners to rent out or sell unused buildings. However, the reality for many small owners could be far more punishing. Under these rules, even a short vacancy period can trigger steep monthly fines, often amounting to thousands of dollars. Cities will use digital monitoring systems, smart meters, and satellite data to detect unoccupied properties, meaning owners who travel frequently, handle long renovations, or wait for better market conditions might still face severe penalties. What appears to be a housing reform could become a financial trap for everyday homeowners trying to manage their assets responsibly. For individuals who inherit old family homes or maintain secondary residences, the consequences could be devastating. Once flagged as vacant, the property becomes subject to escalating fines that continue until it is occupied or sold. Some laws may even authorize local governments to seize and auction properties deemed abandoned, regardless of ownership intent. Bureaucratic delays and paperwork errors can further complicate matters, with owners being fined even when homes are technically in use but misclassified by automated systems. Wealthier investors may easily absorb these costs, but middle-class families and retirees will struggle to comply, especially if rental demand in their area is low, or if they cannot afford renovations needed to attract tenants. The system effectively forces private owners into the rental market whether they are ready or not. The broader danger lies in how these vacant property penalties reshape the concept of ownership itself. Governments gain increasing authority over private assets, and citizens lose the freedom to decide how they use their own property. In the rush to fix housing shortages, policymakers risk punishing the very people they claim to protect. For countless individuals, 2026 could mark the year when keeping a second home, renovating an inherited property, or simply leaving a space empty for personal reasons becomes a costly liability, inching them closer to financial ruin and potential homelessness. Number 4. Energy efficiency compliance mandates. The upcoming energy efficiency compliance mandates, scheduled for 2026, are being presented as a major step toward environmental sustainability, but they carry heavy implications for property owners. These regulations require all residential and commercial buildings to meet strict energy efficiency standards, including upgraded insulation, double-glazed windows, solar integration, and certified energy audits. While the goals appear noble, the cost of compliance can easily exceed the financial capacity of most middle-income homeowners. Failure to meet these new benchmarks may lead to fines, loss of occupancy permits, or even a legal classification of non-compliant dwelling. That means a family could technically be prohibited from living in their own home until it meets specific energy standards. What seems like an environmental policy could effectively push ordinary people toward debt, forced sales, or homelessness, especially in older neighbourhoods where infrastructure upgrades are prohibitively expensive. Governments justify these mandates by emphasising reduced emissions and lower long-term energy bills. Yet the short-term reality remains harsh. The required upgrades involve hiring certified contractors, purchasing costly materials, and obtaining multiple inspections. In many areas, there are limited service providers, creating bottlenecks and inflated pricing. Homeowners who fail to complete the required changes by the official deadline could face compounding penalties each month. For landlords, the situation is even more challenging. They may be barred from renting out non-compliant properties, instantly losing their income source while still paying mortgages and taxes. As a result, both landlords and tenants stand at risk, one from financial collapse, the other from eviction. The shift toward automated compliance enforcement deepens the concern. Governments plan to use smart meters, energy consumption data, and property sensors to verify adherence remotely. A small change in usage patterns could flag a property for inspection. This transformation of environmental policy into digital surveillance and economic pressure could redefine housing rights in 2026. What began as a collective effort to protect the planet might evolve into a silent mechanism that penalizes ordinary citizens for not keeping pace with expensive sustainability standards, leaving many to wonder whether green laws are truly about the environment or just another path toward loss of home ownership. Number 5. Zoning reform loopholes. Among the most overlooked threats to housing security in 2026 are the zoning reform loopholes hidden within new urban development laws. These policies are being framed as modernization efforts to solve housing shortages, but in practice, they often give developers and local authorities sweeping powers to repurpose land under the banner of urban renewal. Once an area is reclassified as a redevelopment zone, existing homeowners can be pressured or even legally compelled to sell their property at government-assessed prices. What appears to be an opportunity for community improvement can quickly become a forced displacement scheme where private citizens lose homes to make way for luxury towers, shopping districts, or corporate projects. These loopholes are subtle, buried deep in legislation where the phrase public benefit is broad enough to justify nearly any form of acquisition. The danger lies in how these laws alter the definition of property rights. Traditional protections against eminent domain abuse are being diluted by new clauses that allow governments to justify land seizures based on projected economic growth or sustainability goals. Developers, often working through public-private partnerships, identify high-value neighbourhoods and lobby for rezoning approvals. Homeowners, meanwhile, are given limited time to appeal and almost no negotiating power over compensation. For families who have built their lives in these communities, losing their homes under legal development feels like sanctioned theft. Once their property is marked for redevelopment, remaining on the land becomes financially impossible as local taxes and construction disruptions escalate rapidly. These zoning reform loopholes also worsen social inequality. Wealthier districts can resist zoning changes through legal teams and political influence, while middle-class or low-income areas become easy targets. The result is a steady migration of working families out of city centres, replaced by commercial structures designed for profit, not residents. By 2026, urban landscapes may look cleaner and more modern, but behind the polished skyline lies a troubling truth. Entire communities uprooted, homeowners silenced, and long-standing neighbourhoods erased in the name of progress. These zoning laws, hidden under technical language, might quietly become one of the most powerful tools of displacement in modern history. Number 6. Digital ID and property registration laws. The expansion of digital ID and property registration laws in 2026 will mark a major transformation in how ownership is verified and maintained. Governments across several nations are developing centralized digital systems that link every property title to a verified digital identity. At first glance, this move appears efficient, designed to reduce fraud and streamline transactions, but it introduces unprecedented control over private ownership. Under these systems, homeowners must consistently verify their digital profiles to maintain access to property records. Any mismatch in documentation, expired identification, or unverified updates could lead to temporary suspension of ownership rights. That means, until the digital status is restored, a person might be legally restricted from selling, renting, or even proving ownership of their home. A single clerical error or technical glitch could instantly place a property in administrative limbo. This digital dependency creates a fragile foundation for ownership security. Imagine a homeowner unable to log into their government portal because of an expired ID or technical outage, effectively losing access to vital property documents. With physical deeds being phased out, digital verification becomes the sole proof of ownership, controlled entirely by government or authorized entities. Some systems are also linked with financial institutions and taxation databases, enabling automatic deductions for unpaid dues or maintenance penalties. While this integration promotes accountability, it simultaneously removes layers of human oversight and recourse. In countries adopting AI-based identity matching, even minor discrepancies like a name variation or outdated address can trigger red flags, freezing access for weeks. Beyond the administrative concerns lies a deeper issue of control. Centralized digital IDs can be programmed to restrict access based on compliance, such as tax records, energy standards, or loan history. A homeowner who falls behind on regulatory updates might find their property digitally inaccessible. As nations embrace these interconnected systems, personal ownership begins to look more like a conditional license than a permanent right. The promise of security through technology could easily evolve into dependence on systems vulnerable to cyber attacks, manipulation, or bureaucratic misuse, turning digital efficiency into a silent gateway for mass dispossession by 2026. Number 7. Mortgage Data Transparency Acts. The upcoming Mortgage Data Transparency Acts in 2026 are being introduced under the banner of financial fairness, yet they may quietly open the door to a new era of algorithmic control over homeowners. These acts require banks and lending institutions to share borrower data with centralized databases that evaluate financial behavior in real time. The goal is to create a transparent, risk-based mortgage system. However, this transparency comes at a cost. Once active, artificial intelligence systems will continually analyze income, spending habits, and payment patterns to adjust mortgage rates dynamically. A single late payment, an unexpected drop in income, or even a change in employment status could trigger automated rate increases or reclassification into a higher risk category. What was once a fixed, predictable mortgage could become a fluid financial instrument, changing as frequently as your monthly expenses. These laws also allow institutions to pool and compare borrower data across platforms, removing traditional privacy protections. That means your mortgage standing may be influenced not only by your personal record, but also by aggregated neighborhood statistics and overall economic conditions. For example, if your area experiences declining property values or rising unemployment, your individual mortgage terms might automatically worsen. This form of predictive lending shifts control away from human lenders towards self-learning algorithms, which prioritize institutional security over consumer stability. As a result, homeowners could face rate adjustments without prior notice, leading to sudden unaffordable payments and eventual foreclosure. Appeals will likely be slow and heavily bureaucratic, leaving individuals trapped while their property value collapses. The broader implication of these Mortgage Data Transparency Acts is a fundamental shift in financial autonomy. Homeowners will effectively live under continuous digital surveillance, where every financial decision feeds into a risk model that determines whether they can keep their home. The laws blur the boundary between accountability and intrusion, allowing financial institutions to operate with near total visibility into personal finances. By 2026, homeownership could evolve from a stable, long-term commitment into a high-stakes algorithmic game, where the smallest mistake or financial fluctuation becomes grounds for losing the roof over one's head. Number 8. Land value recovery fees. One of the most underestimated threats in 2026 is the rise of land value recovery fees, a new form of taxation designed to let governments capture a portion of the profit when local development raises property values. The concept sounds fair. If public projects increase your home's worth, you share part of the gain. But in practice, it becomes another financial burden on ordinary homeowners. When cities build new transport lines, shopping centres, or corporate hubs nearby, property assessments automatically rise. Under these laws, owners must pay a recovery fee based on that unearned appreciation, even if they never sell or benefit directly from the change. For many, this fee will arrive as a surprise bill, sometimes amounting to tens of thousands of dollars, calculated through opaque valuation formulas. Those unable to pay risk property liens or forced sales, making this policy a quiet yet powerful eviction mechanism. The system favours developers and governments while punishing small property holders. Corporations owning vast real estate portfolios can absorb or negotiate these costs, but middle-class families cannot. Imagine a modest home's value doubling due to nearby infrastructure. On paper, it looks like profit, but for the owner, it's only a paper gain. No money has changed hands, yet the government demands payment as if wealth were created. This model treats appreciation as income, converting homeownership into a taxable liability rather than a long-term investment. It also introduces a new layer of unpredictability, as fees can fluctuate whenever development occurs in the region. Owners living near urban expansion zones may find themselves perpetually taxed for economic uplift they never sought. Beyond financial pressure, these land value recovery fees shift the moral foundation of property ownership. Instead of being rewarded for maintaining property, citizens are penalised for external improvements they cannot control. Governments justify this as promoting equality, but the real effect is a steady erosion of personal wealth under bureaucratic oversight. By 2026, this policy could redefine home ownership from a symbol of stability to a fragile economic contract, where even prosperity in your neighbourhood becomes a reason for the state to knock on your door, demanding its share of your unrealised fortune. Number 9. Squatter protection laws. The emergence of squatter protection laws in 2026 represents one of the most controversial legal shifts in modern housing history. These laws, often framed as humanitarian measures to address homelessness, grant increased rights to individuals occupying vacant or disputed properties. While intended to protect vulnerable populations, they often do so at the expense of legitimate property owners. Under these regulations, if a person resides in an unoccupied home for a certain period, sometimes as short as 30 days, they may gain temporary tenant status, granting them legal protection from eviction without a lengthy court process. This means that even if someone illegally enters your home or rental property, you may be unable to remove them quickly without formal legal action, which can take months or even years. For landlords or homeowners travelling abroad, a single unauthorised occupant can become a serious financial and emotional nightmare. These laws are rooted in the idea that housing is a human right, but they fail to balance compassion with responsibility. Property owners who find their homes taken over must follow strict eviction procedures, often hiring lawyers and paying court fees while the squatters continue to live inside. sometimes without paying a cent. Law enforcement agencies, constrained by these new legal protections, can no longer intervene without judicial approval, even when ownership proof is clear. In many cities, organised squatter networks exploit these loopholes, targeting vacant or listed for sale properties and using the slow pace of the courts to their advantage. For small landlords, the costs of legal battles and property damage can be devastating, leading many to abandon rental ventures altogether. The unintended consequence of these squatter protection laws is a deep erosion of confidence in private ownership. Rather than protecting the vulnerable, these measures may encourage exploitation, turning ordinary citizens into legal victims. As more cases appear, homeowners will begin reinforcing or vacating properties out of fear, further shrinking available housing. By 2026, the balance between humanitarian intent and property rights could collapse entirely, leaving honest owners powerless, while those exploiting the system enjoy unprecedented legal shields under the guise of social justice. Number 10. Insurance and climate compliance laws. The rollout of insurance and climate compliance laws in 2026 will reshape the very foundation of home ownership. These new regulations require every property to carry climate risk verified insurance coverage, ensuring that homes located in zones exposed to flooding, wildfires, or rising sea levels meet updated safety and environmental standards. At first glance, these laws appear reasonable, aimed at protecting citizens from natural disasters. Yet beneath the surface lies a system that could financially devastate millions of homeowners. Insurance companies are now authorised to refuse coverage for properties deemed high risk unless expensive renovations or upgrades are completed. For many, the cost of compliance, from elevated foundations to new drainage systems, will be unaffordable. Without valid insurance, banks can legally revoke mortgages or demand full repayment, effectively forcing homeowners to sell or face foreclosure. The insurance sector's new partnership with environmental regulators adds another layer of vulnerability. Homes are categorized into digital risk tiers based on AI models predicting future climate exposure. These models consider not just current conditions, but projected hazards decades ahead. A house perfectly safe today might be flagged as uninsurable tomorrow due to long-term environmental forecasts. Once labelled high risk, the property's resale value collapses overnight. Owners find themselves unable to refinance or sell, trapped in a depreciating asset they can neither live in comfortably nor legally insure. Many of these policies are written in complex technical language, leaving ordinary citizens unaware that their coverage could vanish after a single re-evaluation. At its core, the insurance and climate compliance framework transfers the cost of climate adaptation from governments to individual citizens. Instead of funding large-scale infrastructure improvements, lawmakers shift responsibility onto homeowners, making them bear the financial burden of environmental change. Those living near coasts, rivers, or heat-prone regions face the greatest risk, even if they've maintained their homes diligently for decades. By 2026, these laws could redefine the meaning of uninhabitable, transforming safe family homes into unsellable liabilities. What began as a climate protection policy may quietly evolve into a bureaucratic filter that decides who deserves to keep their home in an era of rising environmental and financial uncertainty. By 2026, homeownership will no longer be a simple matter of paying bills on time. A new web of regulations, from digital ID verification to AI-based mortgage systems, is transforming homes into compliance assets constantly monitored and revalued. The middle class, once the backbone of stability, stands on fragile ground as governments and corporations reshape the rules of living. Every new reform comes dressed as progress, yet its hidden cost is personal freedom and financial security. Staying unaware is no longer an option. These laws are already moving quietly through local and national legislatures. Now is the moment to act, not react. Learn how your region plans to implement these changes, connect with community advocates, and seek expert advice on property rights and digital ownership systems. Awareness is the strongest defense against policy-driven displacement. If you want to safeguard your home and future, stay informed and ready for what's coming. If this breakdown opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dive analyses, and share this video to spread awareness before it's too late. Drop a comment below. Which of these laws do you think is the most dangerous to ordinary homeowners?